It's the Benz Brunani womanist, baby boys, baby girls, you need to hear this. Sit down, receive this realness. Make sure your cup's ready for the tea, we are go sip it, yo. Hot and scalding for your long throats. You might learn something you never know. Collect you fine, and she's one of a kind. Don't say you're mine, say you're mine.
Hi, Wendell. I don't know if you can hear me.
Hello.
Hi. Thank you so much. I won't keep you at all. Thank you so much for agreeing to speak with me. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for before.
So first things first, I just want to say how much of a big fan I am of your work. From The Wire. I think I've watched The Wire like 5 times from beginning to end. And I saw you twice at the Young Vic Theatre.
Oh, wow, yes, yeah. Last summer, this time. Thank you very much.
It's just, your acting is phenomenal. I fully stan. I admire your work greatly. So it's an honor to be able to chat with you today about Clemency.
Thank you very much. The honor's mine.
And I'll just launch straight in then. I noticed that with a lot of the work that you do, there is a social narrative to it. If it's not Robert Zane in Suits, because I watched all of that, The Wire, like I said, Death of the Salesman, that speaks to, like, I guess, the American experience or the illusion of the American dream. There is a lot of social commentary that goes on in the work that you choose to do. So I just wanted to kind of ask, is there a process to that, how you go about making these choices as to these roles? Because we see the same thing in Clemency as well, and what it's saying about society and the death penalty.
I'm very fortunate in the fact that people see me that way sometimes. And so I get the offers from projects that will have a social justice bent to them. You can go through my CV and see there's some really awful, silly, really awful stuff. So it's by good fortune that the work that is actually most profound and important actually gets the attention that it does. So it's by the nature of the good work that it gets the attention, and thereby giving me the attention and the reputation of picking stuff like that. I try to, because I feel as though that's the role of an artist. It's the place what thoughts are to you when you lie awake at night and reflect on who you are, who you hope to be, your failures, your triumphs. What thoughts are to the individual, theater, art, all art forms, is to the society as a whole. It's the place where we collectively think about who we are, who we hope to be, decide what our values are, then act on them. And so I always feel as though that's the responsibility of artists. It's this place when we reflect on the barbarism of what is executions, and do they reflect our values and who we are? For those considerations, it's not something to be just considered alone. It's something we need to consider collectively, and decide what our values are and move towards something that I hope will be a lot more civilized. There was a time where this wasn't even a part of the consideration. We see you, Ms. Okafor did it, string her up, public executions were commonplace and acceptable. And we've evolved from that because we collectively decide that those are not reflective of our values. I still think we can go further, and hence my participation in a film like Clemency.
Yes, no, and I think that that's so wonderful, because you talk about the fact that as a society we have evolved. That's how we see it. But racism has also evolved. Because when I was prepping for talking with you, I was just like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then I'm looking at stats for America, seeing that since 1976, Black people have made up African Americans have made up 35% of the executions, but they're only 12% of the population.
Absolutely, and you know that is proof positive of systematic racism. And what I tell people now, that in the midst of this great protest movement and time that we're in, we have captured the zeitgeist of the world. understand that I think it's tilting at windmills and a false pursuit if we're thinking of trying to end racism. Right? That's not the pursuit now. Right? Right now is to capture this moment to change policy and structure of institutionalized racism so that that structure does stops the damage that it's doing. I'll decide and deal with your heart and mind later. I'll do that in the theater, right? But I want to put policies in place and destroy the infrastructure of institutionalized racism that puts a prohibition to mass incarceration, criminal executions, because we know disproportionately we are affected by that.
Yes.
And understand the history when you go to change the infrastructure, understanding the history, which is, this is the same thing. People always say, well, what does that have to do with the history of the enslavement and the transatlantic slave trade? I said, because nothing has changed. It's the same thing. It just from generation to generation, it's amorphic and it changes into something new. Slavery turned into Jim Crow. Jim Crow turned into mass incarceration. The 13th Amendment.
13th Amendment,
right, gives us all of our freedoms. It ended slavery. You will have all of your rights as a citizen of the United States, and you're not denied them whatsoever. You cannot be enslaved except if you have a criminal record.
Yeah.
And that exception, that loophole, then gave those who did not have our best interests at heart, I can't enslave them. I'll come up with a systematic way of always having, putting them in a criminal record, putting a criminal record on them. And so therefore I'll be able to take away those rights the way I did before, prior to emancipation, right? And so when that wasn't working, then we said, okay, let's do Jim Crow laws. We have the rights as a state to do something from the federal government. So in the state government, we can separate, we can take your money, we can misappropriate. And so then we had to fight the federal government to say, you oversee that, civil rights laws, change that. And they said, all right, well, cool. Now we're going to come up with mass incarceration. We can call it the drug war. We're actually going to bring in the drugs. The CIA brought in the drugs for Ronald Reagan to finance his war with the Sandinistas.
Yeah, and, disbanded the Black Panthers.
Right. Yeah. Right. So you bring in that and you say, hey, we're going to put in the drugs and then we're going to criminalize them. So we're going to bring so much drugs in, we're going to know exactly where to go to get the drugs, to criminalize them, to arrest you. You found drugs. And then all of a sudden we're going to make sure, crack is more prolific in the Black community. So we're going to make the charges on crack 10 times greater than that for powdered cocaine, because that's the drug of choice for the elites and the white suburbanites. So it's by design. It's not by chance. Right now, police brutality is heightened because they have a thing called qualified immunity, meaning a police officer only has to say, I feared for my life.
Yes. Yes.
And that because they have an immunity that is greater than any of our
humanity.
Right? Anybody else?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so therefore, all of those things are a part of an ongoing fight. So it's not, the question isn't, will we end racism? Will we continue to be as vigilant as we need to be as you fight a chronic disease, just like cancer? We have to fight cancer, this cancerous, metastasizing disease that is killing us, and put it in remission. And then ever vigilantly make sure it stays in remission. So when it pops up again, because cancer does that, we're able to put it in remission again. So that's the way I'd like to think about it. People have always asked me recently, well, where's the hope and all? I said, man, I'll consider that when we stop this shit right now.
Yeah.
I don't have time to think about. I said, we change all of these laws. We put some of this stuff into place. We change some of the infrastructure of organized racism and structural institutionalized racism. Then when we do all of that, then we can sit down and be reflective on our work and then talk about the hope.
Talk about hope. We need to survive first to have hope, right?
Right. So, to talk about hope now is a distraction. I'm sorry, I talk
Yes.
too much, Miss Okafor.
No, that's amazing. That's because you're passionate about it, and that's what I love. Rather than okay, no, you're passionate about it, and that's what means the world to me. And this is what
Say
this
your
podcast
mind,
is all about.
you know?
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I'm about. I'm effing and blinding, swearing all up and down because I'm so passionate about like you say, societal change. But one of the
And we
things
have
that
unity.
gets
It's not
me,
just a U.S. thing. We're
yes,
celebrating the 40th anniversary of the Brixton Uprising,
right,
right? The same issues. Last summer, when you saw me in the play, 2 of my colleagues were stopped there in London. They didn't believe that it
wow.
was his car. Martin
But this,
and Binghay and
yeah,
and
this
and Femi.
Femi, yeah, this is what we find over here though, and that's what I thought was even interesting when I did watch Death of the Salesman, because I know what Britain is like and how we don't really like to talk about race, because I just thought, yeah, we're talking about this as, Willy Loman. I know we're talking about Clemency, but we're looking at Willy Loman and we're looking at this a black man playing Willy Loman with a black family. He was well liked. What does that mean when we're looking at how black people are not liked and how they're not meant to attain the American dream? I felt like they could have
And the
really
denial
pushed.
that Willy Loman was in, not seeing
Yes.
that he was being crushed, his individualism, his soul, his spirit was being crushed because he was embracing an idea that meritocracy was going to work for him.
Yes.
How self-destructive that is, and how the individual is crushed by that false dream.
Yes.
That is given to so many people when the system itself is doing everything to make sure that you don't achieve the dream.
Yeah. And, I loved it. I was ranting and raving about you on the show when I did, when I came to watch it both times. And I was saying that, even the insistence that Willy Loman said to him, I want you to, one of his sons, I want you to work. He wants to work on the land. And he's like, no, I want you to get a job. I want you to be in an office, things like that. It's interesting that he felt like his liberation was going to be still working the land, a reversal of where everything started. So then it brings me to thinking about, it says you were born in New Orleans in Louisiana.
That's where I am right now.
Oh, wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but being at home, being in that environment, the amount, when we look at Hurricane Katrina, which I know that you had an initiative for as well, there are systemic things that happen. And I know we talk about, hope isn't right now, but how does one fight the exhaustion? Because that's what we saw with Bernadine Williams, your wife, Alfre Woodard plays your wife, and your Jonathan Williams. She is exhausted. He is exhausted. Yet they keep playing. Well, Jonathan doesn't want to play anymore, but they keep playing as pawns in the system. How does that play out for an individual?
What happens is an individual has to be very vigilant and protective of their not only self-worth, but well-being. And that is what Jonathan is saying to her constantly. We were going to step away. We were going to retire. We were going to just enjoy this life together and understand that your value and your worth is not just in this job that you do. And no matter how detached you may think you are not. And it's not only having a destructive impact on your life, it's having a destructive impact on our lives and our relationship. The metaphor that we see when I read the beginning of Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison to my students, you're seeing an artistic metaphor within the film that says that we have become the invisible man, that we have become nothing, that we have no impact, and we have allowed this systematic, barbaric racism to destroy who we are as individuals and as lovers. And to see me reading that to this next generation, it's a cautionary tale. It's almost telling them, don't be me. Don't fall victim to this the way I have fallen victim to this, and the way our relationship and Bernadine has fallen victim to this. Know your self-worth, and know that you have to be vigilant to make sure that you don't lose your individual nature, and you don't lose your soul and spirit in the name of something that we know is barbaric. And for every person that we have killed who is innocent, because we know, this is the fact, we know we have executed people who were absolutely innocent, because that was before DNA evidence, and every year we are releasing people who we find out after DNA has exonerated them that they weren't the person who committed the crime. And even if they are the person that commit the crime, what makes us any different in taking a life? Coming up with a rationale to take a life. They had a rationale. We thought it wasn't worth it. A robbery, hatred, jealousy, and a jealous rage, some perversion, sexual perversion. All of those are rationales that we don't accept, just because we like, oh, we put them to trial and we put them through a court system, and all of a sudden our rationale is some sort of civilized way that justifies taking a life. There's no justification for that.
No, the barbarism of civility. This was something that, it was even the crux of the transatlantic slave trade. We're going to bring you civilization. You guys are savages over there in Africa. We're going to come and we're going to rule out and make little countries of your continent. And we're going to teach you civility. And we're going to take you then and take you over to the Americas and do whatever the hell.
And give you some civilization and give you
exactly, while you build
a religion that we have no respect for, and all of that. Yeah.
So there is so much. There are so many layers to it, and I think it's interesting that you even mentioned as lovers. I love the poem of The Invisible Man. That stuck with me. The hope, as we talked about, on the students' faces as well, like they still have a chance to not be sucked in by all of this. But my favorite line was when Jonathan is talking to Bernadine, and he says something like, I want to be whole, and I want you to be whole, even if that means you're not with me.
Not with me. Yes, that's real love. That's real love.
Yes.
That's real love. Which is real love is when you say that I want the best for you, even if that best does not include me.
Woof.
That's like courage. Courage is not acting in the face, not acting in the absence of fear. It's acting in the face of fear. That's true courage. I am still fearful, but I will do something about my present situation. And that's true courage, and that's true love. And the thing that empowers you is the fact that there are those who have gone before who have given you that opportunity, and the viewpoint of how you can manage your way through these difficult and dysfunctional times. There are those who have gone before. When it comes to the protest movement, when it comes to individual love, I think of Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee, who were famous African American theater couple, actors who talked about the trials and tribulations of their 70-year marriage. To say there were times that I had to let her go or let him go, so that he can be his whole self and allow himself to come back to me, emotionally, even though we may not have divorced, to emotionally come back. And that's what you see with Jonathan and Bernadine, that he's trying to say, this is dehumanizing and is crushing not only to the victims, those who are the victims of the crime, and the victim of this execution, but everyone who touches it, everyone around it, it destroys their humanity.
Yes.
And we cannot let that destroy our humanity. And I would hope that you would see that. And if you can't, and I have to step away, I hope that my stepping away allows you to see it and allows you to be happy and be whole.
Yeah.
And that's what Jonathan is saying. And that's true love.
It is. It really kicked me in my tummy when I saw that. I was just like, oh God, that's so mature. I don't have that maturity. But no, it was beautiful. And I know that my time is up with you now, I think. I have one more question.
No,
but
you have more time. You have more time. You have 10 more minutes.
Thank you so much.
1:30,
Okay.
I'll have it, yes.
Thank you so much. All right. So then leading on from that question, what struck me as well was the power dynamics. Let's look at the power dynamics of Bernadine, for the fact that it's a woman that's running this
right.
This thing, this machine.
And it just shows you the ignorance of Hollywood too, because they would say, oh, wow, that's such a unique interpretation, having a black woman run a prison. There were 5 just in the region that we did our research in. 5 black women who are wardens, right? So this idea of perpetuating the mythology of exclusion in Hollywood, oh, we would never see a black woman as a warden in the prison.
Exactly.
We've never seen that in film. All of a sudden now this is the first time. But yet in real life, there are so many.
Yes.
So, but go on, you were saying about the power dynamic.
And but that's exactly it for me. I saw it and I just thought, oh, and I'd seen something similar when I was watching Orange is the New Black, and they tried to have and she couldn't survive, and it's the same with Bernadine. She cannot survive in this system because I guess that something calls you back, something calls you home, especially with Anthony looking at the process, knowing almost that he's innocent in that situation, but being unable to do anything about it because the process has already started. And even when we see moments where she's trying to show him grace, it still doesn't carry through. But there's that dynamic, and there's the dynamic of whenever we watch films, it's usually the woman yearning for the man, come back to me, come to me. Right. But here we see a quietly yet decisively loving husband that does put an ultimatum on the table, like, I don't want to do this anymore, like, I want more of you. And to me, that is different to see that play out. Absolutely. That was one of the things I loved about it. First of all, just to see black love. Yes.
The demonstration of black love and the sacrifice that people will make for black love, and knowing that I'm doing everything possible to lift her up and have that change of power dynamic. That is because of Chinoye.
Yes.
Our director. Now it shows you why we need more women of color at the helm, as producers, as writers, as producing films that will actually depict a more true example of how we live our lives. A
nuanced reflection.
Oh, we want diversity. Actually, I say diversity is synonymous with truth.
Yes.
Our world is not just all white male dominated. The power structures have been that way, and we have to fight that continually. But this idea of seeing something different is actually seeing what is truthful, and to see that power dynamic switch is because you have the insightfulness of a black woman who is producing it and writing it and putting the story out there, right? Yeah. To show, Ms. Okafor, to show her, say, oh, that's me.
Yeah.
Here I am. And I never get to see me.
And that's it. And you don't get to see that. You got to see Bernadine troubled. She couldn't sleep, and she'd startle at night. And Jonathan is there. There are so many things in that I related to when you're carrying the world and you feel complicit in a machine that you're unable to stop. And then so it's playing on you, and everyone around you is just like, you can step off at any time, and you're like, but how? And if I step off, who comes in my place to continue? Right,
and if I step off, I lose her,
Yes.
If I step off, I lose her. And if I lose her, then, I can't take that chance until he goes, I have to. I have to take that chance, or because we're both going to be lost if I don't take a chance of stepping away, and maybe she will come. I always hope that at the end of the film, she comes to me. Right. Yeah. After that moment of the cathartic moment that she has at the end of the film, which is, I just want to say, you have never seen a shot like that.
No.
Of Bernadine, and to see Alfre Woodard go through an amalgam of different emotions, this roller coaster in a single shot for a long period of time, the director having the trust of leaving. I think that is a historic shot in cinema. A historic shot in cinema. Yeah. And when you see a single shot and see the trust of a director to leave it just as a single shot of this character going through the roller coaster of emotions that she's going through, and then to see demonstrated by one of the great actors in our generation, Alfred Woodard. That moment alone is historic. It's never been seen before. I would put it on par with the arrival of Omar Sharif and Lawrence of Arabia, famous, the opening of Goodfellas, that long tracking shot that Martin Scorsese did, and that cathartic moment with Bernadine, Alfred Woodard, the acting, and then the direction of the trust to leave this one shot open for a long, uncomfortable length of time.
That is the word.
That sends all the audience through the same roller coaster that the character is going through. And it just shows you the power of cinema.
It's incredible. That final shot, I was just like, I'm uncomfortable, but I had to then interrogate myself as a Black woman as well.
Absolutely.
I was faced with another Black woman's pain, and I'm always, cussing people out on social media that, why don't you want to see Black people's pain? Why are you so desensitized to Black people's pain? And we go on this absolute journey with her, as you say, through her eyes, through the quivering of her lips, through there's a whole story that's told in her face that it's, like you say, the amalgamation of the journey that she's made throughout, when we see her drinking. And I feel like there was a simmering thing there with her colleague as well. But it brings us to this whole thing and this crescendo. And the crescendo is actually just in her face.
Right.
And
the stillness of the shot is so amazing. And to me, that is like at the end of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, the freeze frame, the Truffaut, Children of the Balcony, the Truffaut film, when he turns and looks in the camera, to me, it was a part of cinema history. I really encourage people when they see it to know that is so seldom done. And it shows you the power of what art and cinema should be, which is there, but by the grace of God go I. You automatically put yourself in the shoes of that woman.
Yes.
Right? That's why you go to the theater and turn off the lights and we sit there so we can see ourselves reflected in the journey and the story of the characters, so that you then go, how does that impact the way I see life?
Yes.
What is my value system?
Yes.
What am I gonna change, or what am I going to even exacerbate even more in who I am and who my character is? You learn from it. Entertainment is just a byproduct of the real work, the real transformative thing that happens when you see a piece of art. You really are reflective of your journey on this earth. And that's what you do. You put yourself in Bernadine's shoes and you go, I could not do that. And to know that is happening, I can't abide by that continuing. And so that's what I hope for Clemency, that when people see the film, they then look at themselves in the mirror and say, what am I going to do? What is going to be my contribution in this dynamic, this paradigm? How am I going to change it? So it's so wonderful. I'm so proud to be a part of it, really.
No, and that's what I saw you in it, and I was just like, of course, the great is also there. All of the greats. Yes.
Thank you.
This is amazing.
And Aldous gives an amazing performance too. Aldous Hodge.
He's amazing. He's amazing as Anthony Woods. Yeah. He's fantastic. The entire cast, Danielle Brooks, like everyone.
That scene, that is another example of, talk about love. First of all, God, I think about that scene and I have to hold my head. I go through so much. It is the greatest. It's one of the most wonderful demonstrations of love, confession of love, and how the pressures of the situation are so destructive of that love.
Yes,
and one of the greatest betrayals, right?
Born out of love.
Born out of love, a betrayal born out of love, that someone chooses to give up that part of something they would never have done if it wasn't for this situation.
For this system.
For the fact that this system is telling us that we're going to put this man to death. And so one of the greatest betrayals of like, I am going to deny the love that we have. I'm going to recognize it. I'm going to celebrate it. I'm going to make it a clarion call for us so that you identify and know how much I love you. And then after that, for my own survival, I have to betray that love and detach myself from you.
Oof.
All in that one scene, and that was just superbly acted.
Another facet of Black love. So we see that exploration through your Jonathan and Bernardine, and we see it through them.
The uniqueness of Black love is the fact that there are pressures in our relationship as Black people that aren't in others' relationships. We have all of those things that you have in your relationships, all the challenges of your relationships. But then to have this systematic, institutionalized racism that also impacts it, you don't have.
No.
You don't have. And to overcome that is to stay together and to come. That's what I mean by Black love. The union and the destruction of that union by outside forces that is unique to our coming together.
Experience. Yes.
Our experience. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. It's good seeing you again. It's good seeing you again.
And I hope that you'll be back in London soon, like blessing us on the stage. I don't want the ceiling to fall down. Just everything to be wonderful. Yeah.
Yes, I hope to be there by the at the beginning of the year. I'm going to be shooting Jack Ryan again from London. We're going to be based in London.
I'll be an extra
after this pandemic comes to an end, or we control it soon enough, we'll be back, and then hopefully back on stage doing Richard III.
Whoa!
So you got a scoop there. Yes. So.
Oof! Yes. I'm going to be ready. Watch. I'll be an extra in Jack Ryan, and I'll be in the audience for Richard III. I'm going to be everywhere, just there screaming. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Have a wonderful weekend, and cook some wonderful jollof.
I shall. All right. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
It's the Benz Brunani womanist, baby boys, baby girls, you need to hear this. Sit down, receive this realness. Make sure your cup's ready for the tea, we are go sip it, yo. Hard times calling for your long throats. You might learn something you never know. Collect you find, and she's one of a kind. Don't say you're mine, say you're mine.